Directors Williams, Wolf, Hartman, Adam, Lavanino, Richardson. Lizaldi. Mosby. Clark. Schneider.
Here.
Patino. Sierra. Lowe. And Chair Bennett. Directors Wolf. Hartman. Oh, absent. Adam. Lavanino.
Aye.
Richardson. Lizaldi. Mosby. Clark. Schneider.
Aye.
Patino. Sierra. And Chair Bennett. Motion passes 11-0.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Scott Wins representing Kaiser Basic. I bring before you another item that we've brought for the last couple of years. This is a conflict of interest. And this is not personal. We believe that Mr. Greg Hart, an employee of yours, has a severe conflict of interest sitting on a board called the Santa Barbara City Council as a grantee and influences the decisions made by this organization as a grantor. This is unconscionable. Now, Mr. Hart, just the other day, stepped down on a memorandum of understanding over the Olive Mill roundabout because he had a conflict of interest. He thus confirmed our point of view. Mr. Hart should either not be working for you or he should not be on the City Council. You have only one way to go on this one if you want to be ethical and upright. He is a double dipper. He's getting both sides of it. I have watched him sit at numerous financial meetings for the city of Santa Barbara and at the overall budgetary meetings that you had down on the beach. He spent copious amounts of time as a city councilman. How can he be a full-time employee of this organization and still be working the number of hours that he's working for the city of Santa Barbara? And I would be saying this of anyone that had this conflict. I urge you to make a decision that if Mr. Hart is reelected to the council, he cannot work for you, and if he decides to drop out, then he can continue working for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now moving on to the consent calendar. Are there any items that the Board of Directors would like to pull? Director Adam.
I'd like 5D, please.
Director Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to pull item 5A.
Director Lavanino, did you? Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to push an item? Anyone up north who wants to pull an item? Okay. We also have I have speaker slips for consent items D, E, and J. So let's go to the Board of Directors first. Director Adam.
Yeah,
Mr. Chair, excuse me.
Go, yeah,
I need to read it into
go
record.
ahead. Sorry. I need that.
5D. 5D, Santa Claus Lane Class 1 Bike Bike Path Project. 1, approve and ratify and authorize the chair to execute a First Amendment to the agreement with M&S Engineers for the period of October 17th, 2013 to June 30th, 2018 to complete project approval and environmental document for the Santa Claus Lane Class 1 Bike Path Project. And 2, authorize the executive director or designee to extend the time of performance in accordance with Section 4B of the agreement.
Can somebody explain to me why this happened?
Mr. Chair, Director Adam, this was an item that just frankly got lost in the shuffle, and the monitoring of the agreement lapsed, and so we have to bring the contract back to your board. We're not asking for any additional funding for the cooperative agreement, but we do need additional time in order for the project to get through this component.
Well, you know, you say in here that it was held up for months. Why do we need 3 years if it was just held up for months?
Unfortunately, I can't answer that question, and because this was something that transitioned over to me, so I was involved personally with it, but this is something that we definitely will learn from. And
well, if we don't know what happened, how can we learn?
Yeah, there wasn't, Mr. Chair, if I may. There was an issue with working on a memorandum of understanding with the county and the city for the maintenance of the bike path once the bike path is completed. So some things were delayed until that could be worked out. That still has not yet been worked out. The fact that the contract expired already and the work is still being done was an oversight on our part, and we are developing a database of all of our contracts and identifying the deadlines, and we're going to monitor that on a quarterly basis so this does not happen in the future. So this was again prior to my arrival here, of identifying a contract that expired and the work is still being done. So we're trying to rectify that and taking it to the board as appropriate, as required for your approval. So we recommend that we not stop this project and we continue with the work and finish it within the new timeline that the city has brought to us.
Okay, are we guaranteed here that we're not going to come back for more money, or we're saying we're not coming back for more money now?
Again, this is the current phase, so for the next phase, there will be probably a request for more money. Whether or not it comes from our sources or other sources, other grant sources, remains to be seen. But as far as this phase is concerned, we are recommending that we not come back for more money for this phase.
This phase being the study?
The environmental, I'm pretty sure it's the environmental and preliminary engineering phase.
Yeah, it doesn't say much in this board letter. So could this delay jeopardize any funding sources for the construction phase of the project?
There are no identified funding sources for the construction phase of the project yet. So yes, it could. I mean, if we're not ready to go when we apply for those funding sources, that could hurt its chances of getting additional funds. Okay, so
why can't we get this done in less than 3 years? I don't understand the necessity of putting a 3-year time.
Well, it's kind of after the fact. So, you know, the original contract or the extending the deadline was in 2015. So we're basically giving them time to finish the work that's being proposed, or that was being proposed originally, and giving them a year to do that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item that was pulled was Director Wolf. Madam Clerk.
5A, Measure A Citizens Oversight Committee. There's a speaker slip for.
I've got D, E, and J on consent.
He wants to speak on 5D.
Well, we're not there yet. So
We just did 5D.
Oh, you're talking about,
5D,
there's no B here in
D
speakers.
is in dog.
D is in dog.
the one I just did.
Ah, gotcha. Okay, come on up.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Scott Wins representing Cars Are Basic. From day one, we've objected to this project. This is a multi-million-dollar project. This isn't just a couple $100,000 here, maybe $750,000 there. We've gone through the city of Carpinteria's budgetary allotment for this. There's a lot of money in this. It's unneeded. You currently have a Class 2 bike lane on the other side of the freeway. So you go under the freeway at Padero Lane, you go down the frontage road, you come back over to Carpinteria. Now, you have to understand that until I had a game-ending injury, I rode my bicycle 50 to 70 miles a week for 40 years. People can't say that I don't know about bicycle riding. This is an ungodly screw-up, and this is completely political. It has nothing to do with the reality of having the bicyclists being able to get down to Rincon. They already have that ability. We urge you, do not extend this. Let this expire, because this is not a good project. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ed France.
Thank you, chairs. I would like to speak real quickly to the Santa Claus Lane bike path, because I really actually appreciate it being called out from the consent calendar because of its importance and the timeliness of its arrival for the South Coast Bikeway Network and for the California Coastal Trail, which this route is a part of. This is not some political project. This is actually part of the California Coastal Trail and access for the city of Carpinteria to one of the most well-used public beaches in our area, which is Santa Claus Beach. To access Santa Claus Beach from the city of Carpinteria by bike or walking requires about 1.5 mile detour around out to Villa Real and then to the Santa Claus interchange exit in order to access the beach, whereas it could be as short as 1/4 mile from the end of Carpinteria Ave within the city of Carpinteria. Additionally, this project is tied to the 101 HOV lane expansion. It's not a nice to have, it's a must have. And the discussion of the importance of this item is not that it needs to happen in the future, but in fact it needs to happen now and on an expedited time frame. It's a great gift that we were able to receive funding from the ATP program from the state of California for the Rincon Trail extension, connecting Carpinteria Ave out to Rincon County Beach Park and to the route connecting through Muscle Shoals. However, the Santa Claus Lane extension is equally as important, equally tied to the 101 HOV lane, and if that project is not funded by the 101 HOV lane, the discussion has been that actually allows it to move forward faster. The Bicycle Coalition would really like to see that project move forward on an accelerated time frame. Unfortunately, it has been second after the now funded Rincon Trail extension, but now the time for this project has come. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, Director Wolf's item that she pulled.
5A, Measure A Citizens Oversight Committee. Receive and file Citizens Oversight Committee letter regarding compliance with the provisions, requirements, and voter mandates specified in the Measure A Investment Plan and Ordinance Number 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have a question, I have a comment, and that is to call out all the people who are working on the Citizens Oversight Committee and the fact that they do a lot of work behind the scenes, and I would say more importantly that they have come out with a very positive report to our board that we are investing our Measure A funds as was noted in the Measure A document. So I just think for the public, it was one of the reasons I just wanted to call this out. And again, to appreciate the work from the Oversight Committee. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. We still have 2 consent items that we wish to be spoken on. Mr. Wentz, item E as in Edward, if I'm reading this correctly. Madam Clerk?
5E, Caltrans Master Agreement for Federal Aid Projects. E1, approve and authorize the Executive Director to sign the Caltrans Master Agreement number 05-6090F15 and to make the required certifications in the Master Agreement. E2, adopt a resolution authorizing the Executive Director to sign Caltrans Master Agreement number 05-6090F15 for federal aid projects. And 3, adopt a resolution delegating authority to the Executive Director to execute program supplements, cooperative contribution agreements, fund exchange agreements, fund transfer agreements, and/or amendments under Master Agreement number 05-6090F15 during the period of August 17, 2017 through August 31st, 2027, so long as the local matching funds neither exceed the amount appropriated by the board in the overall work program, not exceed an amount of $3 million unless otherwise ordered by the board.
Thank you. Mr. Wins?
Again, Mr. Chair, Scott Wins representing Kaiser Basic. On item E, Caltrans. Quite honestly, I am beginning to wonder if Caltrans knows what the heck they're doing. They built the La Purisma roundabout and they killed a man. They built the 154 roundabout and there's been massive accidents there, one of which almost killed an individual on Christmas Eve. They continue to go forward with projects. As an example, the County of Santa Barbara not voting on the Memorandum of Understanding for federal funds on the San Ysidro roundabout forwarded to this organization, which did not do its job, then forwarded it on to Caltrans, which did not do its job, and then was forwarded on to the federal government. And down in LA, we pointed out the county never voted on it. They backvoted it after they were given the funds. If you have an organization like Caltrans sitting right over here that can't follow the trails, then why are you doing this? This is not a good project setup. You have to start backtracking and telling Caltrans, we want an itemized result on what you're doing. And if you can't give us an itemized result on what you're doing, then we're not going to authorize this. Do you want to go on to Jay?
Yeah, if you would, please. That'd be great.
Okay.
Madam Clerk?
5J, fiscal year 17-18 overall work program and budget amendment. J1, adopt a resolution amending the fiscal year 2017-18 overall work program and budget to add tasks and funding for marketing and outreach to support peak hour rail service implementation in coordination with Low Sound Rail Corridor Agency, to adjust Federal Transit Administration Section 5304 funds and state planning and research carryover balances, and to add funding to reflect previously contracted professional services for the Goleta Ramp Metering Study, the Santa Maria San Luis Connectivity Plan, and the Airport Land Use Plan Compatibility Program Plan work elements. And 2, approve and authorize Executive Director Margie Kern to execute these amendments to the OWP and budget.
Thank you. Mr. Wins?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Scott Wins representing Kaiser Basic. Rail. Isn't this wonderful? Lawson just came back to you last year and said, oh, and by the way, the new projects for the sidings and so forth are now 800% more than they were when we first authorized it. You're talking about $8 million versus $1 million for just one siding. That would cost $1 million. On the radio last week, you had a former member of the Chamber of Commerce, actually the chair of the Chamber of Commerce, state, by the way, it's not going to work. That's in the city of Santa Barbara. So if these people are now coming around to this point and saying, this isn't going to work, we don't have enough room to put the rail in. If we don't have the money, you don't have enough money for the 101 widening, yet now you want the taxpayers to come back and spend more money for rail that isn't going to work. This is a private line. This is not a public line. Amtrak just begs, borrows, and steals the money they can for their surfliner. And I'll point out that the same former head of the Chamber of Commerce said 10 years ago, I firmly believe that in 10 years, The majority of tourists that come to Santa Barbara and the South County will be coming by rail. They're not doing that. They're driving their cars. Rail is a false lead. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Madam Clerk, since I screwed up and didn't have you read through the consent agenda, you want to do that? Or we just want to move on?
We just read the ones that are pulled.
Okay. Then it's back to the board for approval. Someone like to make a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the consent calendar.
I second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Directors Wolf?
Aye.
Hartman? Adam?
Aye.
Levanino?
Aye.
Richardson? Aye. Lizaldi?
Aye.
Mosby? Clark? Aye. Schneider? Aye. Patino?
Aye.
Sierra? Aye. And Chair Bennett?
Aye.
Motion passes 11-0.
Madam Clerk, agenda item number 6.
Item 6, Fast Forward 2040 Regional Transportation Plan and Sustainable Community Strategy and Supplemental Environmental Impact Report. 6.1, hold public hearing on the Fast Forward 2040 Regional Transportation Plan and Sustainable Community Strategy and the Supplemental Environmental Impact Report. 6.2, adopt CEQA findings and a resolution certifying the final supplement to the Environmental Impact Report for Fast Forward 2040. And 6.3, adopt a resolution adopting Fast Forward 2040 Regional Transportation Plan and Sustainable Community Strategy for Santa Barbara County.
Go ahead.
Good morning, Chair and Directors. I'm Mike Becker of staff. And before I get started, I just want to say that the last couple evenings I gave this presentation to my wife, and her one comment was, I need to slow down, breathe, pause. So if I'm going too fast, feel free to tell me. We're here today for the second of 2 required public hearings for the consideration
I'm glad you got some help with that.
for the consideration of Fast 2040 and the certification of the environmental document. I'll provide a presentation on the plan. Eric Von Berger of Rincon Consultants will discuss the environmental document. And in addition to holding the public hearing, we're recommending that the board adopt Fast Forward 2040 as the Regional Transportation Plan Sustainable Community Strategy and certify the environmental document. I'm happy to take questions during or after my presentation. I first want to provide an overview of regional transportation plans and sustainable community strategies in general. First, regional transportation plans, they're a requirement of both state and federal law. They're long-range planning documents looking at a minimum of 20 years. They show how the region will invest in the transportation network over that time. They're fiscally constrained. And since 2008, they've been required to contain a sustainable community strategy or an alternative planning strategy, and they're required to be updated every 4 years. This update is due today. The last update was adopted in August 2013. And sustainable community strategies, they're a requirement of state law, SB 375 of 2008. They implement AB 32 and SB 32, the Global Warming Solutions Act. They're essentially one piece of the state's overall greenhouse gas reduction puzzle. They show how the regional transportation plan is integrated with the RHNA process, or the Regional Housing Needs Assessment. And the purpose is to accommodate growth in a pattern when combined with the transportation network achieves the state's greenhouse gas reduction targets. And it's important to note that there's no requirement of consistency between the sustainable community strategy and local or general plans. And SB 375 is explicit that cities and counties retain land use autonomy. Nothing in a sustainable community strategy transfers land use development approvals to SBCAG or the state of California. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on the process. However, I just want to highlight that this has been a very long process. We began roughly 2 years ago in August 2015. We achieved many milestones along the way. The star on the right shows where we currently are. We're at the end of the process, at the point where we're asking or requesting that the board adopt the plan. Now provide an overview of the RTP part, Fast Forward 2040. It continues the basic strategies of the adopted 2013 plan. The sustainable community strategy is nearly the same. The projects, the transportation projects and investments are largely the same. Some of the completed projects have been removed. There's some new local projects. However, there's no new major regional projects, and no major regional projects have been removed that have not been completed. The goals and objectives are largely the same. In this cycle, there was no new RENA process. We did not update the regional growth forecast. We had the same planning horizon at 2040. Throughout the process, we met with the Joint Technical Advisory Committee, which is the Planning and Public Works staff representatives, 15 times to receive review and direction on the plan. And early in the process, we also met with the planning department of every jurisdiction in the region to build consensus on the land use assumptions. We had an extensive public outreach process, which I'll get into more on the next slide. The investments in the transportation network and the preferred scenario satisfy the goals and objectives of the plan. There are no compromising trade-offs. We developed this plan using the 2010 Regional Transportation Guidelines, a document that Caltrans puts out, and it meets all state and federal requirements. Considering that this plan is largely an update of the adopted 2013 plan, we took the opportunity to streamline the document, which I feel we were successful in accomplishing, and it also enabled us to pursue a supplement to an EIR rather than a full new EIR. It's also important to note that the RTP is consistent, it's internally consistent, that is, it's consistent with other applicable SBCAG plans such as 101 in Motion and the Regional Active Transportation Plan. For the public process, in September of 2015, we came to you and received approval on the public participation plan for the project. The public process was divided into 3 phases. For the first phase, Peter Imhoff and I went out and met with roughly 25 organizations throughout the region, discussed what we were doing, and received initial input. The second phase occurred last fall, and that involved 2 public workshops. We held a public workshop in Santa Maria and then one in Santa Barbara. And the third phase is concluding today. It involves the 2 public hearings. The first, as I mentioned, we conducted during your May meeting. Since late May, we held a public comment period from late May through early July for both documents, the environmental and the plan. We received a lot of comments. The comments, as well as the staff responses, are included in the appendices of the respective documents. We made some minor revisions to both documents based on the comments. However, there were no significant revisions. What we're bringing forward today is very similar to what we brought in May. And one of the fundamental aspects of a regional transportation plan is to forecast available revenues out to the planning horizon and allocate those revenues to transportation projects. For this cycle of the Regional Transportation Plan update, we forecast roughly $6.1 billion available out to 2040. And while the many different categories of projects are funded, in summary, roughly 62% of available funding is for auto-oriented modes, 34% goes to transit projects and services, and roughly 4% goes to bicycle and pedestrian projects. The plan is fiscally constrained, that is, we are only allocating the amount that we have, that we reasonably expect to have available. Since the passage of SB1, we do not speculate on revenue sources. Previously, we were speculating that state gas tax revenues would return to their historic norms, which with the passage of SB1, that accomplishes. So therefore, our revenue forecasts are conservative. And the cost escalation and revenue growth factors are consistent with the Measure A strategic plan. Now the sustainable community strategy. It's consistent with the requirements to accommodate growth out to 2040. It's consistent with the 2013 RENA plan, and it demonstrates how the region will achieve the greenhouse gas reduction targets set by the state. The current targets are 0% per capita growth in greenhouse gas emissions for target years 2020 and 2035. However, the Air Resources Board has proposed updating the region's targets to -13% and -17% for the 2 target years. Those targets are ambitious yet achievable. However, they're in line and slightly below with what we are currently achieving in this plan. We knew that the targets would not stay the same. The updated targets will be applicable to the next round of the Regional Transportation Plan update due in August 2021. And the preferred scenario of the Sustainable Community Strategy was selected unanimously by the board in October 2016. It is the same as it was largely the same as the 2013 Sustainable Community Strategy. It's transit-oriented development and infill development strategy with an enhanced transit strategy. I think it's important to note that the transportation projects included in the plan are the same as they would be without the Sustainable Community Strategy. We achieve our greenhouse gas emissions reductions through land use. The transportation is not affected through the Sustainable Community Strategy. However, the one addition is the Enhanced Transit Strategy. It's a strategy. Basically what it says is that we will invest future growth in transit revenues to transit projects that support the land use aspect. And now I'd like to hand it off to Eric von Berg to discuss the environmental document, and I'll be back to conclude.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board. Eric von Berg. So we prepared the draft and now the final supplemental environmental impact report for this project. The draft document went out for public review. You can see here from April to the end of May. We received those comments on that, and then that's what is now included in the final SEIR that we prepared for you. And as well, there was public hearings and public comments during that period of time on that. This list here shows you the comments received, which were 4 different letters from Cars Are Basic, from the Air Pollution Control District, and then as well from the California Coastal Commission. All these comments are included in Appendix B of the final SEIR. In response to all those comments, there were a few minor changes, or basically additions to the document that was as listed here from the Coastal Commission letter, just kind of bringing more forward the concept of the potential flooding due to sea level rise from climate change. And that's the text that was added to a mitigation measure just to address that potential issue there with the Coastal Commission. And again, just as far as this being a supplemental EIR, we brought forward all the significant and unavoidable impacts from the 2013 plan, which is shown here with impacts, potential aesthetic impacts, biology, cultural resources, land use impacts, and as well congestion on 101. Do you have any questions for me, or I can return it back to Mr. Becker?
Thank you. Any questions of staff? Director Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the last impact, it says Ventura County line to the Hollister Avenue interchange. Is that, are they referring to the State Street Hollister?
It's the interchange. I think it's on this, is that the north?
No, that's a good question, and perhaps we'd have to look at that, but my assumption would be that it's the Winchester Canyon further out.
Actually, to be correct, it's the Cathedral Oaks Bridge interchange that Caltrans, I don't believe, has yet changed the signs back to where they need to be to say that it's Cathedral Oaks overpass. Has nothing to do with Hollister or Winchester.
Well, I guess then it does need to be clarified. If you can, do we have time to?
It's actually it's the congested miles on that section of 101 there. So it's not actually the interchanges, it's the 101 between those two interchanges.
But there is no Hollister.
Oh, okay.
Hollister runs parallel to 101. So there just needs to be some clarification about the points.
Okay, yeah, we can do that.
Thank you.
Okay, I want to walk you through the review process that we underwent for this. We met with JTAC, as I mentioned, 15 times for seeking review and guidance over the last 2 years. Twice JTAC recommended board adoption and certification of the environmental document. Once before the public comment period, and then once after the public comment period concluded, and we made the minor revisions to the document. And also considering that there's a transit aspect to the regional transportation plan, we took the plan to SBCAG for the review and recommendation, which we received. The plan and the environmental document have been thoroughly vetted throughout the development process. Today, as Terry mentioned, we're requesting 3 things. First, that the board conduct a public hearing, certify the environmental document, and adopt Fast Forward 2040. I have Julio Prucha of SBCAG here to answer any technical questions, and Eric von Berg of Rincon Consultants to answer questions related to the environmental document. And that concludes my presentation. And I can do what I can to look up the answer to that, your question, Director Wolf.
Are there any questions of staff? Any questions from up north?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have 3 public comments on this particular item. I'd like to call up Mike Hecker.
Mr. Chairman, can you please open the public hearing officially? Thank you.
Public hearing is open. Thank you.
Right on, Mr. Bennett. I love how you do things. Hey, good morning, Madam Chair, Santa Barbara CAG, directors and staff. As director of the Santa Ynez Valley Spoke, an official chapter of the Santa Barbara Bicycle Coalition, and as a recent appointee of Supervisor Hartman to the Santa Barbara County Hikers and Riders Trail Advisory Committee, I'm here to speak in support of SBCAG's Regional Transportation Plan, and specifically the bike projects it includes in my community of the Santa Ynez Valley. On behalf of our Santa Ynez Valley resident bicyclists, I'm asking that efforts by the region's jurisdictions be undertaken to implement these projects. We've seen projects be listed in plans for a long time with no action ever taken to implement most of these projects. The RTP in the plan states how the region will invest in its transportation network. Please work to implement the plan. It's frustrating to us, the residents of the region, to see great projects planned with the majority never implemented. We take time out of our busy lives to participate in the planning processes. Please ask your staffs to return the favor and work to implement the projects in the RTP for the betterment of our community. I can go on, but I think that's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Mr. Wentz.
Again, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Scott Wentz representing Cars Are Basic. In one of the renditions of my life, I'm a research scientist. I've presented internationally and nationally at the American College of Sports Medicine. I look at these comments about sustainable, what are we going to do? The sky's falling. Carbon's doing it. Does carbon form a film that holds energy? No, it doesn't. Does H2O form a film that holds energy? Yes, it does. Al Gore said a decade ago, if we do nothing more, and under his terms at that time, we've done nothing more, the seas will rise a minimum of 1 foot and flood the plain. According to NOAA, the seas have risen approximately ½ an inch. What's going on here? You're making assumptions based upon the sustainable community stuff that has no scientific background as far as I can tell. Has anybody included in this report a volcanologist's understanding of what's been happening to the mantle of the entire world? Italy has seen volcanoes go off. The rim of fire around the Pacific Ocean has been going off now for almost a decade. You have the glaciers in Greenland are melting from the bottom up. Think about that. If you have global warming, how does a glacier melt from the bottom up? It has to do with volcanic activity. You have an issue going on here. Well, we have new batteries. Did you see the new technology? Isn't this wonderful? Yeah. And it's very toxic. And you're building a load that's going to be more toxic than lead acid batteries are. I had a very interesting conversation with a physicist in a public forum, and he says, you don't understand what's going on here. We have things in the lab that's just going to make things wonderful. Yeah, it works in the lab because you have minus Kelvin temperatures, so you're storing energy called electricity, and it's very, very storable, and it transmits across very easily without any loss, but you have to have minus Kelvin temperatures. Nobody's been able to produce that in the real world. You have real problems with this whole sustainable community thing. It's not working, and I urge you, don't work on this. Start looking at the basis and the science on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Brittany Heaton.
Good morning, Chair Bennett, directors of SBCAG. I'm here on behalf of the Technical Transportation Advisory Committee, serving as chair. I'm also the co-chair of the Joint Technical Advisory Committee. So I was in attendance at the over 2 years of monthly meetings where the JTAC met, and that is the Transportation Planning Advisory Committee, as well as the TTAC. We met together. So you had a group of public works people, i.e. engineers and planners, get together and agree that this plan was the right thing to do and move forward with adoption of the plan. And as Michael Becker said, we approved the plan twice, once in May and again in August with the environmental document. And I also want to thank the SBCAG staff for all of their time and effort that they put into this. Peter Imhoff isn't here today. He led the charge, but Michael was the lead staff, and he did this cooperatively and professionally, and we really appreciate that. I know Ann Wells couldn't be here today, but I received an email from her on behalf of TPAC that they also would like to show their support of this item. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to close the public hearing. Go ahead.
Thank you, and I can answer Director Wolf's question. The corridor goes out to what Chair Bennett mentions, the Cathedral Oaks interchange, and we can clarify that in the document.
For additional information, that bridge has been finished for some time, and I originally requested the signs to be changed. They were changed, and then when Caltrans came back in and changed out all the signs throughout the county, they put the old signs back up. And I've once again made the formal request to have those corrected. I haven't driven south on 101 yet, so I guess I'll ask that question. Have we done that yet?
Chair Bennett, I'm looking to confirm that. The last I knew, we were waiting for confirmation from the city on the actual language for the signs in both directions.
I believe we made the correction 2 months ago.
I'll check the status of the sign placement.
Thank you. Okay, back to the board for action on this item. Items number 2 and 3. Unless there's some further questions of staff or any.
We do request that any motion include the correction or the direct staff to revise the naming of that interchange.
Okay, that'll be assumed in the resolution. Would someone like to make a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we move item 2 and 3 on this on the Fast Forward 2040 and supplemental EIR, including the change to the interchange.
Okay, the motion's been made to adopt items 2 and 3.
I second.
There's a second. Any further discussion up north? No. Roll call vote.
Directors Wolf?
Aye.
Hartman? Aye. Adam?
Abstain.
Lavanino?
Aye.
Richardson? Aye. Lizaldi?
Aye.
Mosby?
Aye.
Clark? Yes. Schneider?
Aye.
Patino?
Aye.
Sierra?
Aye.
And Chair Bennett.
Aye.
Motion passes 11-01.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, item 7.
Item 7, Santa Barbara County Age Characteristics Report. Receive a report on Santa Barbara County age characteristics.
Mr. Chair and Directors, I'm Brian Breslin, SBCAG staff. I'll go through this presentation slowly, so feel free to ask questions along the way. SBCAG is a census affiliate center, so we analyze and disseminate census data in Santa Barbara County. So this report is census-based. This is a resource document, so there's a lot of raw data tables so the reader can do additional analysis. And the report focuses on baby boomers, which is a significant demographic trend and is in the media quite often. The report shows the distribution and growth of the population, for example, using thematic maps and Department of Finance age projections. The report identifies the impacts of the aging population, for example, on South Coast aging population on the workforce. And then also it describes demographic characteristics, for example, poverty, disability, and veterans concentrations throughout the county. This slide shows the countywide percent age groups for North County and South Coast, North County being north of Gaviota. Starting at the bottom of the slide, the total population, North County has a few percentage more than the South Coast. But you'll notice that the preschool and school age, North County has approximately twice as many as South Coast. That's due to the number of births. There's twice as many births in North County as South Coast. And it suggests that there will be additional commuting from North County to South Coast because there's additional workforce in the future from those school age and preschool aging through the workforce. The college age, South Coast has more due to UCSB, but that population tends to cycle in and out and not age as the rest of the population. And then the working age is greater in North County, and retirees is greater in the South Coast. The slide shows a change in median age between 2000 and 2010. The only region that decreases is the Santa Maria Valley, and that's due to the fact that Santa Maria has half of all the births in the county. This slide shows a countywide percent change in age groups between 2010 and 2060 based on Department of Finance age projections. As you can see, the over 65 age groups all increase over 100%, while the working age only increases by 16%. The next slide shows the countywide dependency ratios. Basically, this shows the proportion of youth that's less than 18 and seniors over 65 per 100 working age, and that's 18 to 64. So you can see the senior ratio increases almost by double. So basically, there's a higher proportion of seniors versus the working population, the working age population over time, 2060. And then the youth population essentially drops, the ratio drops, so there's fewer youth entering the working age population as well. So overall, we'll see a smaller, proportionally smaller workforce. This next slide shows the South Coast labor force participation rate by age. As you can see, age over 55, it drops fairly significantly. So what does this suggest? The next slide shows some issues with the aging in place of the population in the South Coast. Workers retire and prefer to age in place based on a number of surveys from the AARP and others. They can also cash out, move out, et cetera. However, the majority, according to these surveys, want to age in place. Approximately 1,400 South Coast workers over 55 drop out of the labor force annually. So the question is, where will these new replacement workers live? The South Coast housing is limited and expensive. So are we going to see new commuters from Ventura or northern Santa Barbara County? Are they going to be replaced by younger local workers that'll eventually want their own households? This next slide shows a countywide household size by age of householder. As you can see, the household size drops significantly at 45 years and over. So this suggests that some of the older households are overhoused and possibly available as senior housing will allow them to downsize and open up the housing to larger families. The next slide shows the countywide median age by means of transportation to work. The younger population tends to use alternative modes of transportation, and the older workers tend to work at home. So as we see the population aging, we'll likely see more persons working at home. This slide shows the countywide household median income by age of householder. After the prime earning years, 65 and over have a lower median household income. So as that population increases, we'll see more households with lower incomes. This next slide shows demographic characteristics for aged over 60, countywide versus the highest proportion in the county. So the city of Guadalupe has some of the highest proportions of poverty, those that don't speak English, Hispanic. And Lompoc has the highest proportion of disability. And then veteran status, Vandenberg Village, Orcutt, and Buellton have the highest percentages. So in conclusion, as baby boomers continue to retire in the South Coast, there will be continued commuting by younger North County workers to South Coast jobs in a proportionally smaller workforce. And transportation is changing with the shared economy, making it easier to age in place. So there's a lot more detail in the report. I'll try to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you. Any questions of staff? Anyone up north? Thank you. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, item number 8.
Item 8, 1-minute reports. Board members and alternates are invited to provide updates on the activities of their districts or cities.
Anyone wish to make such a report? Anyone up north? I'd like to make a real quick one that in the city of Goleta, we've taken a lot of heat on the condition of our roads because they're very poor. But as of right now, we have a rather massive program going forward in repairing those roads. And we're also about halfway through our Class 1 bikeway from Pacific Oaks to Elwood School on Hollister Avenue, which has created some congestion, but it's still working. So we're pretty excited about that, and that should be finished about October. And all the resurfacing should be finished about that time as well. So I ask everyone out in Goleta, just bear with us. You'll be much happier when all the roads are finished and they're smooth to drive on. So thank you for your patience. Director Richardson.
Yes. You know, I have to talk about our basic industry in the city of Solvang, which is tourism. I want to remind the folks that in a couple of weekends we will be having a large car show on Saturday, the 28th, I believe it is. And then the following month, on the third weekend in September, we'll have our Danish Days celebration, and we want to see everybody there. Thank you.
Thank you. Executive Director's Report.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I have several items to report on. First of all, I want to congratulate the 6 agencies that submitted alternative transportation active transportation program grants this past cycle. This was an opportunity on their SB1. They allowed folks who did not get funding in the last cycle to resubmit their projects. And so we submitted, I think, 7 projects from this county, totaling over $20 million in requested funds. So we shall see if we're successful on that in the next few months. But we prepared a list of those projects, and it's in front of you. Second, I want to let you know that we are working on the 101 multimodal project application for SB1. In front of you is the brochure we used last week when we spoke with the state, the California Transportation Commission, as well as Caltrans, setting ourselves up for funding opportunities under the Congested Corridors program. So we are basically a poster child for that program, multimodal, reducing congestion, having alternative modes included in the package is a plus, and having our Measure A as matching funds also helps a whole bunch. So we were working with our local jurisdictions to come up with a funding strategy, and we're meeting next week to discuss that. So you will see that in the next few months of what would come out of that. August 9th, we had a presentation from the LoSand Executive Director. We talked about the April 2018, the retimed peak hour rail service starting. So included in your consent agenda was the OWP amendment for SBCAG to work on the outreach and the marketing of that service. So we are gearing ourselves up to be a part of the team and make sure that that's a success once that service is implemented. I'm really excited about going out to bid on the Coastal Express service that was also on your consent agenda today. It'll be interesting to see what we get back. As we told the North County Subregional that MTD was not able to provide the operations of that service at this time. So that's something we might want to work on in the future. But going out to bid is the right thing to do, and seeing what prices we can get for that service, and see if we can get a better deal. So we will see what comes out of that. And last but not, or two last things. Thank you so much for adopting this plan. This was due today. We needed to adopt this plan so we can be eligible for all these funding sources. So that's a major milestone for this agency. It happens every 4 years. So we were successful on that. And thank you to the staff that worked so hard on that, as well as Peter Imhoff, who's no longer a staff person with SBCAG, but his blood, sweat, and tears are all over this document. So thank you all for all your hard work on that. And last but not least, I want to congratulate Greg Hart. I've appointed him Deputy Director of the agency, and he will be on my side and working and accomplishing the goals of the agency as we move forward. So with that, I'll take any questions you may have, and otherwise, I'm done. Thank you.
Any questions of our Director? North? Not hearing any. Okay, move on. Next item, Caltrans District Director's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, and I would also like to introduce to you Terry Persons, the newest senior transportation planner within my organization. She's met some of you already. She appreciate her leadership in my group, and so she will be a familiar face to you here in the near to long term. I wanted to let you know that we are very excited and active in preparing for revenue generated by Senate Bill 1. By 2027, in 10 years, the department is committed to repairing 17,000 miles of pavement, 55,000 culverts and drains, 7,700 signals, signs, and sensor type elements, and 500 bridges. We're taking an asset management approach to the state highway system in terms of our ability to maintain and preserve the existing system that we have that works so hard for us every day. And we're also very active in anticipating the competition for the discretionary programs under SB1. As your executive director mentioned recently, looking together to pursue potential funding, more funding for the HOV, Highway 1 corridor, the multimodal corridor. We also find that our partnership strength is a real advantage to us in this new environment looking ahead. We're also advancing construction on 13 pavement projects statewide in anticipation of SB1, and one of those projects is in Buellton with the reconstruction of the concrete pavement in that location. So we'll be getting that underway very soon. You have a fairly robust project list in your agenda packet, and this will grow as we embark on the SB1 projects. Any questions for me?
Go ahead.
I've got a few of them. The concrete pavement, is this sidewalks or is this by our shopping centers?
I'm sorry, I need to clarify that. This is on US 101. It's the concrete slab pavement of the main lines of 101.
Terrific, thank you. A couple questions. First of all, you're still replacing signs, correct, on the 101? Our first southbound exit onto Buellton still says Avenue of the Flags instead of Avenue of Flags, and I just want to make sure that it hasn't been replaced with the wrong sign.
We had that verified, but I will check again.
Thank you very much. And the other one's a little more important. Traffic on Highway 246 east of McMurray Road. We've got 2 shopping centers. Caltrans, we're still having all kinds of fender benders. Caltrans is waiting until one of the buildings has more occupancy, but it's pretty well filled out already, and I know our city would really like to work with you to come up with an idea for traffic calming on 246 there. While you're doing that, I've had a request to restripe the eastbound side of 246 with the Class 2 bike lane. The road is pretty wide right there, and we're hoping that we can continue all the beautiful work that you're doing on the other side of 101 in Buellton with the bike lanes and the new roads. If we could continue that Class 2 bike lane to free our drive on the eastbound 246, it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair, on 246, I know we were able to accommodate a different striping pattern on the west as well as on the east with a maintenance paving that we were doing. And with the existing configuration, I think that we've built out what opportunities are currently available without a widening or a reconfiguration.
Okay, I know that you're going to be looking at traffic calming measures right there. And if while you're looking at that, our bicyclists, what you've done on the west side of 101, greatly appreciated. If we could continue that so that it goes into the Beale Flat area while we're working on the traffic calming. I mean, we've got to do something. We keep having fender benders, so we've got to go in there and work on it anyway. If we could just look at it.
I'll follow up with your City Public Works.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair? Thank you. I didn't catch if you mentioned it, sorry, if the updated timeline on opening up the intersection at Castillo Street in Santa Barbara.
Through the chair, I believe that's on schedule for, it was supposed to be done in August prior to the school year, so I'll double check. I don't have any news flash that it's been delayed, so.
Okay, well, I think the school year starts Monday, so.
I'll find out.
Okay, that would be great, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? I have one. I actually had a constituent ask the question, and I shrugged my shoulders. I said, I don't know. What was the purpose for doing the work on the curve at Gaviota? There seems to be just a general observation that there wasn't much accomplished for millions of dollars.
Chair Bennett, you're speaking of the Gaviota curve realignment. We had a collision pattern there of related to the geometry of the curve, which we refer to as a broken back curve. It was not a consistent radius turn, and it was important for us to remediate that by correcting the curve.
Okay. That may not be real obvious to people that don't understand the geometrics of roads, but I'll take it for what it's worth. But I've heard that conversation from others as well. So anyway, it was just interesting. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and just to elaborate on that, our safety program is we take that very seriously, and it's a very, I will say, tightly controlled program in terms of when there's a warrant met that's necessary to ensure the safety of the traveling public.
No, I understand. We have, obviously on surface streets, we have the same issues that we have to address. So I get that. Thank you. Director Adam.
Yeah, I just want to notice that having driven that numerous times before and after, it's so much better now than it was. The comfort of driving around that and the stability of the car. And I can't imagine being in a semi or something. That must be a tremendous step forward in a semi.
Thank you.
It does. The curve does work better when I go around it, for sure. Any other questions? Okay, committee meetings.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On both Pacific Surfliner and CRCC, I think Executive Director Kern basically highlighted the issue of what we hope will be retiming of an Amtrak service next spring, which went to the South Coast Subregional. Also on CRCC, there's been discussion about trying to capitalize on cap and trade funds as it relates to rail, and so I think obviously as that's moving forward, it's something that we should probably talk to our other rail corridors and seeing if there's any funding opportunities for rail improvements through those sources of funds.
Thank you, Director Schneider. Calvans, Director Richardson.
The meeting we had was very short. It was more of a recap of the vans that are in operation. The Calvans has a total of 611 vans in operation. Of those, 261 are for general purpose, general commuting, and the interesting one is that 349 of them are for agricultural use. And in Santa Barbara County, Santa Barbara County uses 35 of those van pools. It was interesting that the comment here is that in the first 6 months of this year is that insurance rates or insurance accident percentages have gone way down from 32% down to 4%, with the drivers traveling more than 10 million miles by the end of this year, they project. And as far as a few more technical things, but other than that, there's one other, is that there's an MOU signed in Coachella Valley with Sunline Transit that are going to subsidize each van in their particular van pool in the Coachella Valley, going to subsidize that at $400 a month, which encourages agricultural use in that area. So the agricultural community is using those vans, using the H-1B programs are using them, and because as we realize that labor shortages in the agricultural industry are dramatic now, and CalVans is attempting to aid in that direction. That's it.
Thank you very much. Director Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I probably should have said this in director comments, but I just wanted the SBCAG to know that Directors Richardson, Hartman, and I met on the Highway 154 Safety Committee. We hadn't met in a while, and we met in Buellton with representatives from CHP, our SBCAG staff, and Caltrans. And I know Mr. Hart has a report from that meeting that perhaps can be included as a consent agenda item at the next meeting that goes through what we talked about. It was a very informative meeting and definitely worthwhile. So I just wanted to also thank Mr. Richardson and Ms. Hartman for being there and continuing the dialogue.
Mr. Richardson.
Were we going to, I don't want to say legalize, but formally adopt a committee? Okay, will that be on a new agenda soon?
Yes, we'll put that on your next agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would our council please put us into closed session?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have one item scheduled for closed session. It's public employee performance evaluation for the executive director under Government Code Section 54957B1.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The board met in closed session on one item for public employee performance evaluation of the executive director and took no reportable action.